have once a month an event where we would bring in an adult, a panel of adult children of parental alienation, and they would share their stories, their experience. And we always thought that it's very important to have such events. And by the way, if you guys can hear me, let me know. I know that I always have some kind of technical problem. So anyway, so normally we bring in these adult children of parental alienation, and they share with us what their experience like as the alienated children. So anyway, today we are going to go beyond that. So what we have is today we're going to be looking at. I have with me Lulu, who is a child victim who is now an adult, and not only that she have recovered from this. She woke up from the lies and the brainwashing. But not only that, she actually become an activist, an advocate for the victims of parental alienation. So anyway, hi everyone, and my name is Petra Deeter. I always forget to introduce my name, and welcome. Today is our event called Parental Alienation Victims Turn Advocates. And hi Lulu, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. Okay, so we have in the chat room Niti, hi, Mary, hi, and Donna, Marlon, hi. Marlon said it's froze. Is it frozen, you guys? And also let me know if you can hear properly. So anyway, Lulu, you experienced this as a child, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us how old were you at the time? And
I think around the time it started was when I was 6. Well, my parents divorced when I was 6. I think there were several alienation tactics that began while they were still married to each other. But I usually start the timeline at 6 years old.
I see. So you mentioned that you saw some alienating behaviors before the divorce. Do you remember those? Because you were 6, so you're pretty young.
Yeah, I do remember some of the tactics. It was a lot of because my father was in the military at the time, so it was a lot of if he didn't do something the way she wanted, then she would abuse the situation. She would constantly go to his superiors, and that of course affected his time with us. And then there were certain situations like he would be watching us, and she always called it babysitting. So I grew up thinking that fathers are essentially babysitters. Um, and then other things like he coached our t-ball team or our soccer team, and she would constantly interfere in that as well. Just all these bonding moments that children are supposed to have with a parent, she would constantly undermine it, interrupt it. She would say, "Oh, well, I made him sign up to coach your softball team. He didn't really want to do it." So it was constant undercut of the relationship between him with his children.
So you said children, meaning you have other siblings.
I do, yes. With my biological father, there's 3 of us.
Oh, I see. Okay, and are they older than you or younger than you? Or
Out of those 3, I'm in the middle. Later on, my mother did have 2 more children. So I'm one sibling out of 5 total. And I've watched different tactics with each child.
oh wow. So she didn't apply the same thing for all three of you. Different things. Can you give example of how they are?
So my older brother was basically the favored child. He got a lot of attention. He was very big into sports and extracurricular activities through school and different clubs. He definitely got the parent or parents that would show up to those activities and support him, cheer him on. Whereas when I would get into an extracurricular, I didn't really have anybody show up for me. And then the after that wasn't really encouraged to get into extracurriculars at all. I mean, it's like the younger you go down in the siblings among us, it's like lack of involvement. And as far as the other parent, so each of us were treated differently. It was always my older brother he was always too busy. He was always in his extracurriculars to have any contact with our father. I had seen the relationship just become minimal or nothing between my brother and my father. So I was like, oh, well, I can do that too. I can make the decision to never talk to him again. And of course, my mother encouraged such tactics. And then the younger brother after me, of course, watched all this happen. And he was very young at the time that all this started. So I don't think he really remembers the start of all of it. And then my sister, she doesn't even know who her father is.
Oh,
So that's 100% complete and total alienation there.
oh my God.
Um, and then my youngest brother, so I still have a relationship with him. I get to see him on a regular basis when he sees our dad. I call him our dad because he's the man that was there and raised me during my life. So that one is not as extreme. It's more like, um, you know, he'll want to go and do something. My brother, he'll want to go and do something like an activity or go to a friend's house. And my mother will purposely schedule things on the weekend or during the time that is planned to spend with our dad. So that's really I think the bare bones of what my youngest brother is experiencing. Whereas as three older ones, and then my sister, of course, we got the heaviest brunt of whatever alienation tactics she was able to apply.
So you have so there are 5 children and 3 different fathers. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So the first father is 3 of you guys, and the oldest is a brother, so a boy. I'm just curious about whether there's some gender thing with the kids. So with you, your girl, so he was a golden child. He got whatever he wanted, and then you're the girl. You kind of got ignored. The next one is a boy, even though he's a boy, but he still got ignored, even worse than you. And then the next one is a girl. She also got ignored.
So the situation with that was a little interesting. My mother was not married or in a relationship with the father for very long. So it's one of those situations where she really wasn't sure if she was going to be able to have the baby or adopt the baby out. And my grandmother was not very happy about that situation. So she kind of became the golden child to my grandmother. So she got lots of attention from my grandmother, who also lived with us for most of our life. So my mom and my grandma, and whatever relationship my mom was in at the time, those were the adults that raised me. So essentially, my sister was kind of a golden child as well.
Oh, so if I understand correctly, your grandma was not happy with the father, because not happy with that relationship. So she actually participate in the alienation. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So your mother actually had a companion in this whole thing, and then the last one is now another man, but he's around and he with you guys. So is the youngest one got alienated? You mentioned about something and I forgot. I'm sorry.
That's the one where she'll try to schedule things when it's my dad's time with him. So he doesn't really get a whole lot of the alienation. He has a really tight relationship with his father, to the point to where if he notices or suspects that our mother is interfering, then he will question it. So he's very self-aware, and there's really there's no victimizing him. He's a very strong kid, very bright kid.
And how old was he when the that relationship break down? The
That was
father.
um let's see, I want to say that was 2015 or 16 when the divorce was finalized. So 9 or 10.
Okay, so I felt like maybe he did have a pretty decent amount of time of bonding with his father, which is who you call your father. So that's the other thing too, that you call somebody else father instead of your own father. Like, what did you call your father? I think we have a technical.
So my biological father. Oh, okay. So my biological father, I call him father. And then my dad, who is my youngest brother's biological father, I call him dad.
So in a way, it seems that it's more endearing. Your stepdad is actually getting a little bit more endearing term than your father, right? Because father is somewhat formal and distant, and then and he's your real father, your biological father, but yet he's like being kept at this sort of distant label. But your stepfather is being promoted into a lot more closer role, being replacing. He's replacing your father.
Well, it's not that he's really replacing. I did not have a relationship with my real father until I was 24. And I didn't physically like see him again, like reunite with him until I was 26. That was just 2 years ago. Um,
Oh.
yeah, the bond there, it went past my childhood. It went into me becoming a parent myself and affecting my children. Whereas my dad, he lives in the same state. He lives like 30 minutes away from me. I see him on a regular basis. And it's been easier to upkeep and maintain that bond with him as a parent. Whereas there's a lot to still break through with my father. There's a lot of walls to get through. Um, a lot of just like finding out what kind of person he is and trying to express who I am to him. There's a long way to go with him still.
Wow, I'm so sorry. So wow, that is so you saw all this. So all of these, which one do you think is most effective back then that made you turn against him?
So it happened really fast, actually. It started with tactics like if he loved you, that this coming from my mother and even my grandmother at times. Um, if he loved you, then he would call you. If he loved you, then he would visit you. Um, and very, very early on, my mother brought in the child support argument. I was basically the person that was put in the position and given not only encouragement, but the narrative to argue, mom said that that's my money. It's child support is the child's money. I want my money. Um, so why aren't you paying child support? Why can't I have this? And why can't I do this? Mom says that you didn't send child support this month. And then it quickly enrolled into, instead of calling him by his calling him by dad, calling him by his first name instead.
Oh, you did
And
that
then
too.
to my father.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the communication between him and I, because he was an out-of-state parent, even that early on in the separation, um, the telephone calls, the emails, all of it just started getting I don't think it became less and less at first. I think it was more of my mother would intercept it more and more often and make it seem like he wasn't calling or he wasn't sending emails. She intercepted birthday cards, letters. I mean, she got in the way every chance she could.
Wow. I just wanted to say hi. Donna in the room said that sorry that you had these experiences and thank you for speaking out. Sorry, just hold on a minute. If we have another person, let me just she just messaged me. Um, Okay. Yeah, sorry. All right. So Donna said, sorry that you had this experience. Cassandra is calling from the IE. Hi. Stacy said, thank you for speaking up, Lulu. Keep telling your story and keep awareness going. Stacy, just wait and hear the rest of this story. It's amazing. I promise. She's doing a lot. Donna said, has it affected your relationship to learn the truth about their situation. Guys, feel free to post questions because yeah, I'm gonna try to pick it up. Okay, Tyler asks, why did you start calling your dad by his first name? Yeah, that's an interesting question.
So of course, that's what my mother referred to. You know, after they were divorced, it was no longer your dad or your father or whatever name that the children were calling him. She just kind of nixed that in her narrative when she would speak about him and only referred to him by his first name. And so I think I picked up on it as a distant and disrespectful tactic, and since he didn't love me or didn't come see me, didn't contact me, I needed to have the same narrative. So I adopted just calling him by his first name.
Did you feel like you wanted to please your mother and you don't want to did you pick up on that, she's probably not pleased if you're not calling him by first name?
I think with her being the parent that was in my life and the other one just being completely alienated from me, I depended on her for that acknowledgement that I was doing something right, that I was handling their divorce right, that I was, I was reacting to the other parent the right way, or I was saying the right things, or I think there was a lot of just trying to please her, just trying to look at her for guidance, because that's what children do. They look to their parents for guidance. And when they've only got one and that one parent is manipulative, that's all you're left with.
Right. And then did you ever feel like it's your role to also protect her? Like, poor her, she now have to raise you guys and he left. Like, do you ever feel part of your participation is because you try to play the role of the protector?
Oh yeah, absolutely. She would tell me things, allegations from their relationship, reasons why their relationship either didn't work out or why he was just a bad person in general, or also a bad parent. And I would adopt those narratives. I would listen to her talk to my teachers about him, to my friends' parents, even to my friends as I got older. She would explain, oh, well, he's just a deadbeat. He did this to me in my relationship, and I would constantly use her narrative and defend her and be like, oh no, my mom, she's a saint, she's been through so much in her life, she's just so strong, I want to grow up and be just like her. So different parts of my life I found myself defending her, and to come to find out that I put her on a pedestal the way that I did, it really just kind of makes me sick.
Sorry, because your story is very similar to mine. Just sorry, everyone. Just give me a moment.
No worries.
Okay, it's okay. Sorry, guys. Um, yeah, I went through a lot of that. Where and by the way, you guys, she was 6 years old, and she had to be in the middle of all this, all of these conversation about their relationship and child support payment, and that's just ridiculous. Yeah. So Suzette was saying the trauma from this is real. It is very real. Yeah. Um, and then, by the way, it's very common for the alienated child to call the targeted parent by first name. That is a very common thing. So, in the chat room, Karen said that, her children call her by the first name as well. And it's a way of lower that parents in the hierarchy. It happens very often. Yeah, it's very true. So really, you were empowered, right, to put him down. You feel like when you put him down, you were rewarded, maybe not by physical thing, right?
That's exactly how it was. I was rewarded by love and attention, and I was rewarded by having such a close relationship with my mother, having such a bond that exceeded what mother-daughter should have, what exceeded what best friends should have. I mean, she was literally my everything. I depended on her not only for the needs that a child would normally depend on a parent for, but the amount of emotional and mental dependability was just completely enmeshed. I mean, there was something there was something emotionally and mentally unbalanced by the amount of dependability that was there.
So that's really interesting because, and I see this a lot with all these adult children that I interview, is that, you just said about, you were rewarded with love and you were very tight and everything, right? But at the same time, in that relationship, you are being abused by your mother. And I'm not even talking about the alienation stuff, right? Just in terms of mother-daughter. For example, you mentioned about she would not be there for you when you do extracurriculum activities. What are some other things?
So she had me signed up in Girl Scouts for a little while. At the time, I thought was a total blast. And then she got into a relationship for like less than 6 months, and we moved out of state. And then all of a sudden, Girl Scouts was just like not an option anymore. So it was something like as soon as I got interested in something, that cycle was also disrupted. Another thing that really still plays very heavy on me today, and I still carry a lot of paranoia with me, is she would get very close with my friends, and later as I got much older into like being a teenager, and even my first marriage, she got very, very close with people that I was in romantic relationships with. She wanted to know what I was doing, what I was saying behind her back, essentially, is what she was asking. At one point, when I finally got into community college for a little while, she kept telling my first husband, "Oh, I don't think she's at school. She must be out doing something or hanging out with somebody," filling his head with all this information. And I was a new mom. I think when I finally got into a couple classes at community college, I think our first child was probably 3 months old. I mean, she undercut every part of my life, my education, my relationships, even my relationships with my teachers. She would over I can't think of the word that I want to say, but I was interested into getting into cars at one point, working on cars. And she had gone up to one of my teachers and was like, "Oh yeah, she's really good at working on cars. She's just like super interested." And she just kind of like really talked me up. And then I would get put on the spot about my knowledge at times. And I'm just like, I'm interested, but this isn't really a hobby of mine yet. I need a mentor. I need someone that's going to take the time and teach me these things. So there were a lot of those situations where I was seen for not who I was, and it kind of made me look like a liar. So
Was there a bit in there that was about her more than you, where it's like, oh, look, my daughter's amazing because I'm an amazing mother?
there was definitely a lot of that. And I know I hear this a lot from very proud parents, but I mean, the phrase, "where do you think she gets that from?" Or "she learned it from me," or, there was a lot of that.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm sorry. Um, so, but you were very much bonded with her. You very much look up to her and counting on her. So, when you had this situation where she was talking to your husband and try to make him to think that you were cheating on him, how did you feel?
Um, Honestly, I didn't know about it for the longest time, because, of course, he had faith in me. We had a very strong, the first part of our relationship was very strong. And he had faith in me that I was actually in school. And one day he just kind of broke down to me and started telling me all these things that my mother had been telling him or trying to convince him of. And it was another fight between my mother and I. Around the time I was 15, I started becoming very distant from my mother because of her involvement in my life just being completely chaotic. Um, So that was just one of the things that my ex-husband and I we'd had a conversation about, and I had no idea that it was even happening. I mean, he kept it hidden for months.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. Um, and then I have to ask, like, was she ever physically abusive to you?
No, she wasn't.
Okay, so it's just the psychological abuse that was going on. And then so at 15, you felt like that kind of overbearing enmeshment was too much. So you try to break out of it. And that create the conflict between you two.
Absolutely. And it was really strange because she was very proactive in my mental health. Like I said, I kind of start the timeline around 6 years old. She actually put me and my brothers, us older three, in play therapy for my parents' divorce to make sure that we had the stability that we needed and make sure that we were processing things okay. And then I was in therapy for most of my life, off and on, just dealing with, becoming a young woman, and being essentially a fatherless child. I didn't know that that was the origin of things, but I had a lot of mental struggles that I really couldn't find the origin of. And it was really interesting because I look back and none of these mental health professionals that I saw over the period of my life could help me or identify what was really going on. So yeah, it was really hard for me to identify for most of my life that I was actually abused, because people don't see psychological abuse as abuse.
Yeah, no, it's very hard to see. So I'm curious. The other thing too is about the motivation or the intent of your mother's behavior towards your father. Do you think that what she was doing was completely sort of innocent, and she's only doing it because she thinks this is the best, and not with the intention of harming him?
No, I think a lot of it was definitely retaliation. I think the intent was absolutely there. It was directed at him. Um, I think maybe at first the intent wasn't there for us kids. But I think as the years progressed and she was able to get away with certain things and it started to escalate, I think an intent definitely developed directed at us older kids.
Okay, so there was a harm intent to your father, but then even to you later on it's also intentional. Wow. Do you remember maybe examples of self-proclaimed intent that you could, maybe something that she might have said or anything that made you believe that she had intention to retaliate against him?
Um, I mean, she would tell me that he was an abusive person, not only to her, but to us kids. She would talk about different scenarios. And then I noticed over the years that those stories started to change. So then that got me to thinking, about the details of it and if it was really true. And if it wasn't true, then, why would she say these things? I think as I started to question things, um, those are the examples where I was able to question the details of what she said over the years. I think those are the examples, that the only thing that I can really think of off the top of my head that made me see the intent that was there.
Okay, so you said you woke up to this when you were 24. What
Uh,
happened?
well, the rift between my mother and I started when I was 15.
Right.
I guess since she didn't really have anybody to alienate at the time, she started alienating me from my friends and my relationships. So I started seeing that and acknowledging it. And then around the time that I was 24, I was, well, no, actually before that, when I got divorced with my first husband, I was, because at that time, I was in the frame of mind that my father had abandoned me. And I was like, I'm going to support, I told my ex, I'm going to support you to have whatever relationship with the children. The children are not ever going to feel what I have felt. They're not going to be abandoned. They're not going to have an absent father. I wanted him to be there. Um, and then, of course, my mother intervened and just kind of filled his head with, well, Lindsay's just going to keep the kids from you. And she's she's never going to let you see them. Um, and so she would turn right around and tell me that I needed to keep them away because he was a bad parent and he probably abused them, and that he just wasn't stable. Just like started telling me all these things about my ex as reasons as to why I should keep him away from the kids. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. He's a good parent. So that divorce really, her attempt to control the outcome of that divorce and the relationship of my ex with our children, um, that was a huge, huge eye opener. I think that's probably the biggest thing that hit me as far as alienation in general.
So that's when you were 24.
Mhm.
Okay, so um I'm curious, did she ever say create allegation that your father abused you physically? What about sexually?
No, it was mostly he would just discipline us too hard and leave marks on our bodies. Um, and that he was negligent. So I would be left in the crib with like a dirty diaper that was explosive, and negligence and too hardcore discipline were the main allegations.
And obviously you had no recollection of these because supposedly you were a baby.
Correct. And now that I'm thinking about it, no, I actually do have recollection of my mother spanking me too hard and leaving marks on my body. So, I mean, I guess maybe there was some physical abuse from my mother, but I don't recall my father ever disciplining us or spanking us to the point to where it left marks on our body.
Thank you. So there's a lot of question in the chat room. Okay, Karen, thank you. She said that my mother used to say that it's okay to cry and it's like shower for the soul. Thank you. And Roy said sending love to you both from New Zealand. Thank you. Thank you, Kaylin. Hi. Nidhi said, I'm so sorry for Petra and Lulu for your experiences. No children deserves to go through this. Totally agree with that. Burnett said, I wish that the politicians could see the damage that parental alienation has done to these two ladies. Actually, our stories are not just isolated incidents, and we are going to continue to speak up, and we are going to try to make the lawmakers recognize this. This is definitely our mission. I believe the same with Lulu, the same with Mai, right? Um, okay, we have more questions. We're gonna pick up in a bit, so let's just continue. Okay, so you woke up at 24, and then you did you have a therapy at the time? A therapist?
Um, I think when I went through my divorce with my ex-husband, I was seeing a therapist at the time because I needed to process whether or not divorce was the best thing for our relationship at that time. Um, and the therapy at the time kind of turned from trying to process that to the relationship that I had with my mother and all the chaos that I just felt was going on. And a really important detail that I guess I've left out. So the entire portion of my first marriage. So this is going to get into some of the statistics that fatherless children fall into. I became a teenage mother. I got pregnant in high school. Got married very shortly after high school. Lived with my mother throughout my first marriage and having two children and my divorce. So I lived with my mother all through that time. So her alienation and her tactics were 100% accessible to me. Um, so I just wanted to throw that detail in there just to let people know that, I didn't get a break from her. There was no walls between us.
Yeah, yeah. And the outcome, that it led to you having inappropriate relationships so early on and things like that. Um yeah, so yeah, and that's what I was curious too, is you said you have a therapist that even though it was supposed to be about your divorce, it turned out it's about your relationship with your mother because it was so toxic. I assume that that helped you with waking up to the issue.
Um, it didn't actually. I don't think that therapist really understood what was going on either. And I did stop seeing her shortly after I did decide to get a divorce. So my relationship with that therapist, like what I was dealing with my mother and then the conversation there, it also stopped, obviously. But yeah, anytime in my life she found out that I was talking to a therapist about her, she would have a complete meltdown and tell me that I was going to therapy for the wrong reasons.
Oh, because you're supposed to be counting on her solely.
Well, I'm supposed to be dealing with something else, either my emotional issues or my relationship, anything that wasn't directed at her. I'm supposed to be dealing with my life experiences, not her.
I'm sorry, I kind of have, I'm not sure if it's because somebody's mowing outside my door or if it's just technical. I lost the last bit. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Just pointing out that my mother, did not want me talking to a therapist about her. I was supposed to be talking about anything else as long as it wasn't her.
Oh, so she's even monitoring what you are talking to your therapist about. And now you are an adult with your own children.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, the control, the control and the manipulation. Um, so your father, have you ever gone back and look at the court case and try to figure out what was going on there, like the documents, anything?
Yeah, actually, around the time that I was maybe 25, somewhere in there, after I started realizing what was going on and that the relationship was not what it seemed to be, I had actually gone back and found the court documents, found out how much he was paying in child support, found out what his custody schedule actually looked like. Um, I got everything off of public record and just kind of started my own research from there.
Yeah, and what did you find? What did you see that?
Well, I found out that he was ordered to pay child support. I found out that he was ordered to cover medical support. The basic stuff, and this was not a Texas order. So I was interested to see what the similarities were between a Texas order and an order from out of state. So there were quite a few similarities, but due to him being an out of state parent, he was basically allowed to visit anytime. He was allowed to call anytime. Um, he had no restricted access. He was allowed to contact us whenever he wanted and see us whenever he wanted. And I think probably from the time I was 6 to 18, I maybe physically saw him or on 4 or maybe 5 occasions.
So is it because he abandoned you? He doesn't come
Um,
and visit?
so I know a couple scenarios that I'm able to get information on. So when he got remarried after my mother, I had reached out because they're now divorced as well. I had reached out to her and I knew my mother wouldn't tell me the truth. So I went to the second wife and started asking questions. And she basically told me that he would call a lot. He would try to set up visitation. And I can totally understand as an adult and a parent now, you want to try and set those things up as opposed to just coming from several states away, showing up and being denied. As a child is never going to understand that. But he did try to set up those visitations. His parents, my grandparents, they would try to set up visitations. And I think I only saw them a handful of times when I was still a minor. So, I mean, same tactic towards his parents. And the phone calls, the visitations, they were all intercepted or they were all blocked. They were all told, oh, the kids are busy or the kids have this thing to do. Or I remember at one time, one of my family members died on my father's side of the family. And I wasn't permitted to go because of some tests that I had to take in school. So,
So does she normally really care about your test so much, or is that just
No. Another statistic that I fall into, I had trouble in academically. So uh, she wasn't really involved with my schooling in that kind of way.
Yeah.
I would of course get in trouble if I was about to fail the grade, but I mean, fail a test, she didn't really care.
But that day, it was so important that you cannot miss that test, right?
Right.
Okay. Wow. That's yeah. Like there's no kindness. Even when someone died, you would think that was a special, exceptional occasion for you to be able to um yeah. So I'm curious, and we'll go back more into your relationship with your father, but it affected your siblings all differently. So with your older brother, he was how old was he when this started, and did he immediately just cut off your father, or how did that go?
He was, I think he was 8. And I think there, when it first started, I think he struggled with it more than the rest of us. Me and my other brother. I think he struggled with it a lot more. I definitely remember him being very angry about my parents' divorce, or maybe it wasn't about the divorce. I just remember him being really angry around that time period. Um, I don't know. I don't really remember much else about how he dealt with it or how it affected him, but I do remember very quickly. And of course, I followed suit because I idolized my older brother. Very quickly, he stopped talking to our father on the phone. Um, he he would have he would kind of have arguments with him over the phone. Um, but I also do remember that after a while he did start talking to him on the phone again. Whereas with me, I just, when I cut ties, that was it. I never went back on the phone with him.
And how was your brother with your mother? Like, uh, did they also have this enmeshment that you described about you and her?
So they were not incredibly close like my mother and I were. My brother was definitely closer to my grandmother. And my grandmother is a sports fan. So I think that was a natural flow of things to where she was there for him, supported him on that, cheered him on. Um, as opposed to, um, I don't know. I, he was affected by the relationship with my mother to the point to where he actually left home at like 16, 17, somewhere around there. They got into an argument one day and he just came back a couple of days later, packed up all his stuff and left and went and lived with another family. I actually don't have a relationship with any of my siblings now except for the youngest.
Wow. Actually, there was someone in the chat room that was asking about that, like about your relationship with your siblings. Um, that is really sad. I'm sorry. So your okay, so your younger brother, he was younger than you. Did he also take on immediately and refuse to talk to your father, or how was he like?
When it all first started and their divorce was finalized, he was still in diapers. So there wasn't really much to go on at that time. But from what I can remember, he's never really had much of a relationship with our father. Um, he's just kind of, I guess, been floating around, and he's a very secluded person. So he became addicted to video games and would hide in his room all the time. And just a very isolated person, and not much of a relationship other than the emotional and mental codependence, like I described. There wasn't much of a relationship between him and my mother either. Um, that I guess he didn't really have much of a relationship parental wise at all. He just kind of got dropped between the cracks.
And then your half sister, she did you see her father trying, or you didn't see him at all either?
I remember, like, I know his name and I remember him being around for a very short period of time. But my mother described the situation to me as she wasn't ready to get married. And he had looked at her and said, well, let's just do the right thing and get married. And so she kind of freaked out on him and got his social security number. So if the baby ever wanted to reach out to him when she was older, then, they could try and track him down. But after that, she cut ties with him. And I don't remember ever seeing him again after she found out she was pregnant.
Oh, wow. So really the cutoff was even before she was born. So
Yeah.
it's just complete cutoff. Wow. Um, yeah, that's tragic. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, your youngest one we talk about, he had 8 years or so with his father, who is now also playing the role of your dad and
Mhm.
everyone's dad. Um, so now you're somewhat older. So when they got divorced, what did you see in terms of the alienating behavior toward him, toward the third husband?
So it was a lot of the narrative that was directed at my brother was because when they divorced, there was no way my mother has not worked in many, many years. Um, so there was no way she could afford to keep the house, even though she was given the house in the divorce. And then she told my brother, well, it's your dad's fault we lost the house. It's your dad's fault we're homeless. It's your dad's fault we're in this situation. It's your dad's fault that we don't get to see your nieces anymore. Everything is dad's fault. Everything.
Yeah. So three different men, and it's all their fault. None of this
Always.
is, yeah. She's always a victim,
Yes.
right? And there's had to be always some enemy
Oh
because,
yeah.
right, she has to always attack somebody at some point. Yeah. Wow. It's so similar to my story. I don't have that many siblings. It's just me, but it's actually just, yeah. So okay, so you woke up to this at 24, but you said you didn't go and connect with your father immediately. It seemed like it took you 2 years before you finally decided to connect with him. Why is that? Like, what was going on in those 2 years?
So the same year that my dad and my mom got divorced, they um he was court ordered out of the house. So again, I was left with my mother. And I was in another relationship at the time. We were living in the house still. I had never lived away from my mother still at this point in time. Um, so I ended up leaving like very abruptly in 2015. There was an argument that I had gotten into with my mom and my grandma, and one morning I had enough. I packed up as much as my children's things as I could put in a couple of bags, and I headed for the border, for the state border. Um, I never actually left Texas that day. I came really close. But it was really traumatic. I turned off my phone. Nobody could reach me. I filled the car up with gas, and I was just going to keep driving. I think my initial goal was to just go to Oklahoma and show the kids where I played when I was a kid. And I really didn't have any plans past that. Um, so
Wow.
yeah. So that's what was going on at that time period. Um,
And then what happened that day?
I did end up turning on my phone. I had no calls from my mom or my grandma. I had several missed calls from my dad and my fiance at the time. His parents had even called and texted me to see if I and the girls were okay. And they had me come back, to the area where my fiance and his parents were living, and I stayed over there for the holidays. This was on December 5th of 2015. So right at the holidays.
So you were in a very dangerous situation. You had nowhere to go, and you had kids with you. no job to go to. They had no idea where you're heading to. But the fact that you dare to leave, that they are more angry about that than the concern or worries about your safety and your children's safety. So you are getting the silent treatment. Am I seeing this right?
Yeah.
So it's more important to her to show you, how dare you? How dare you stand up to me? So I don't care how what kind of situation you're in.
Right.
And wow. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
insane. That's abusive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it escalated further actually, um, because when we did return to the house to get the rest of our belongings, the house was pretty much packed anyway, because I mean, she knew she couldn't afford the house. So as soon as she was granted the house on the divorce, she knew that they were going to have to move at some point. So everything that early on was already packed. And I actually ended up calling police out because she wouldn't. We had a key. My fiance at the time, we had a key to the front door. Of course, we lived there. My mom, my grandma, who was in her 60s at the time, and my brother, who I think might have been in his just 20 or 21 or somewhere around there at the time, barricaded the door so that we could not get in. And then when we called police there, my 60-year-old grandma told police that my fiance hit her with the front door and tried to break in. So I could not get my belongings that day. I actually had to send her a letter saying, I will take you to civil court and sue you for all of my belongings if you do not allow me to come and get them. And that was the only way that we could get our stuff back. But before we got there to get our stuff, she had actually gone through everything and taken anything that she wanted.
Did your My goodness, did your fiance got in trouble for that false allegation?
Oh, no, he didn't, thankfully. And I was able to, because I was right there, I was able to tell the officers what had actually happened. We presented our front door key, told them that we had used it. And then they had just decided to barricade the door. And that's when we walked off the front porch and called for a civil officer to come by.
I'm curious because your grandmother clearly played, it seemed like she's also very toxic and she played a very active role in all of this. So I'm curious, what was the situation with your mother's father? Was she also alienated child?
Um, so my mother's an only child. And all I've ever heard about, I want to say grandfather because I know that's technically what he is to me. But he's never been referred as a grandfather to me in my entire life. Just referred to as my grandma's ex-husband. So apparently he was a very abusive person.
Of course.
And
Oh, of course.
but however, my father has actually been able to confirm that he just was not a good person. But that also some of the really dramatic stories that came out of my mother's childhood may not have been as accurate as my mother had claimed to be, as far as what the abuse was or the extent of the abuse.
Okay, so you said that your father confirmed it. I wonder how much your father is confirmed it, just like how people, when they hear this story and they will take side without actually knowing the truth. Because alienators are very good at making other people believe in their stories. And your father may not have been around to see what really was going on with your grandfather and your grandmother and your mother. I wonder if that confirmation was a truly unbiased and informed this, opinion. Um,
I'm not really sure. I know he had met the guy, because my mother and my father, they met when they were in high school. And from what I understand, my grandmother and her ex-husband, they might have still been married at that point. So he was around that person. So I'm hoping that whatever opinion he gave me was based on whatever he saw or some form of fact. Um, because I went to him for answers on some of that stuff. That was one of those things that I had questioned myself. Was this man also alienated from me, or was I actually being protected from a bad person?
Is he? I mean, is he still alive today?
The grandfather person?
Yeah, yeah.
I have no idea. I don't even know his name.
Um, because I wonder, really, I do wonder how much of that is true. Because when you know, when you're being constantly brainwashed with these stories, and then everyone around, there's this smearing campaign, and alienators are very effective at their campaign. How much of that is true? I'm not trying to cover if he was really abusive. That's a completely different story. I'm not taking side either way. I'm just curious about what the truth was. But
And I question that as well. Anything that my mother has ever said, or any relationship she's had, whether it be romantic or a family one, I question everything.
right. And then that's the other thing, right? Once you wake up to this lies, you now question everything. And most importantly, you question yourself, right? Your sense of judgment.
Absolutely. I remember when I did reunify with my father. There was one night when we were all sitting at the table playing cards, and it was after dinner. It was me, my father, my grandpa, my grandma, and I guess she would be like my step grandma, but I've always seen her as like a grandparent. There was none of that step business. Um, so we were all sitting down one night, and I remember asking them, hey, I have this memory and this is how it played out. Is that real? Is that really what happened? And I just remember just like asking for hours that night, is this real? I mean, that is such a strange thing to not really have any memory issues or any cognitive problems or anything, and then to sit down and just have to ask, is this real? That is a really strange and disturbing realization to have.
Yeah, so your life has been robbed from you because now you don't know anything in the past, what is real, what is true, what is not. And I mean, and you were so fond of your mother, and now suddenly this idol that you were looking up to, suddenly it turned out she's a monster.
Yeah.
Right, so you now just everything had been a lie, and now you don't even know, really your childhood has been robbed from you.
Yeah.
um yeah, so then so okay, so back to, okay, you woke up to this from 24. So again, and then you were going through your own situation, running away and all that. But why did
Mhm.
it take you 2 years to get to your father?
Um, so as I started doing the research on my own, trying to figure out what the situation was, I was battling homelessness. I was battling trying to finish massage school and actually get to work, waiting for the license to become active. I mean, there were so many moving parts at the time. And then finally um, reach out to him, what I ended up doing was just basically writing a letter to him and introducing myself, as if like it was just any pen pal. Hi, my name is, this is how old I am, this is my favorite color. Some of my ethic and moral beliefs are A, B, and C. Just like it was literally just me introducing myself to someone who was a stranger to me.
Wow. And hi, everyone. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for joining.
Hi.
Yeah, so Amanda is actually our next guest. So we're doing this series. So, the first one is Lulu. So, yeah, Amanda, just stand by. We're going to continue with Lulu's story, and then we'll
Sure,
get to you
absolutely.
soon. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so go ahead. All right, so you wrote this letter to your father, and you have to introduce as if this is a stranger you're trying to reach out to. How did you feel? And what, was it hard to make that decision to write that letter?
I think I probably spent about 2 weeks trying to write that letter. It was a matter of trying to write it, starting over. No, I shouldn't put this, or maybe I should put this. By the time I finally finished it, I put it in the mail, and then I remember thinking, maybe a letter wasn't the way to go. Maybe I shouldn't reach out to him. Maybe it's too late. I was a bad kid. Maybe he doesn't love me anymore. I said some awful things to him. Maybe I hurt him too bad. Maybe he won't forgive me. Maybe. And I just, even to this day, the guilt just it's just, that's the hardest part of this whole thing, is the guilt that I have for being the child that I was, for saying the things that I did, for treating him the way that I did.
And when you were younger, you didn't know at all, right? This
Right.
You did everything that you thought was right.
Right.
So yeah, so you mentioned something that you said, maybe I was a bad child, so you don't deserve to see your father anymore. I was wondering, did you feel like you were a bad child to your mother as well, like as you were growing up,
Um,
or not good
I don't,
enough?
probably not good enough. Um, I think there were things that I did in my life, or decisions that I made, that were based on whether or not it would make my mother happy. If she would be so accepting that we would just have a one extra bond over this decision that I made, or this part of my personality that developed. I think there was always a part of me that felt I wasn't good enough for her.
Yeah. And what about you as a person? Did you feel like you were not good enough as a person, or not enough? Even maybe good is maybe not the word, but do you feel like you're not good and you're not enough as a human being?
There were definitely self-esteem issues, self-identification issues. You know, I I think the less I felt I was getting my mother's attention, or the less that I felt it, it did come to a point to where, like, every decision I made, or everything I did in my life, and this is speaking when I'm still a minor, um, it just got to the point to where I wasn't enough. So I'm going to do everything I can to not come home. I'm going to get involved in this school club, so I have to stay after school, or I'm going to stay at this friend's house, or um, if I was in a romantic relationship with somebody, I'm going to stay at their house as late as I can, or as often as I can. And I'm not going to be at home as often as I can. I'm not going to have a bond with my mom anymore. She doesn't need to hear these things. She doesn't need to know what I'm up to. It sounds like typical teenager stuff, but honestly, it was me entering survival mode.
Right, right. There's a question. I know there's so many questions in the chat room, but there's a question that said, is there, this is Tyler's question, is there any technique that could have helped you to understand the truth about your mother sooner?
I think there's a book out there, that the first thing that made me feel like I wasn't crazy, a book called Co-Parenting with a Toxic Ex by Amy Baker. And I think if you read that book, it breaks down the tactics and the stages of alienation very, very well. And I think if there was anyone in my life, whether it was a friend's parent, school counselor, one of my therapists, I think if anybody had been able to bring this to my attention and explain these things to me, then my life would have made a lot more sense. That definitely would have helped me, if somebody could have just sat down with me and said, it's okay, and this doesn't have to be your life, and here is what defines what you're going through, and I want you to know that you're loved, and this isn't right. This life is not meant for you, that you are that you're going to be okay one day. I wish there was some, when a crime is committed against a child, there are certain interventions that happen. CPS might get involved, or the police might get involved, the school counselor. I wish somebody had gotten involved and intervened in my life. I wish somebody was there for me, but nobody was.
Right. And if your father was the one that turned up and tell you this is what happened, you probably would not have listened to him, right?
Actually, I when I was turning 18, I actually went out of state to see his parents. And the only reason I went, I said I would go as long as he's not there. As long as, he's not like secretly there, or that he's gonna like pop in for a surprise at some point. He has to be completely absent. And they're like, yeah, he won't be there. He doesn't live here anymore. And we get there at like, I don't know, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And he's in the kitchen getting a glass of water. He lives with them. I was so angry with my parents, or with my grandparents.
Yeah.
And so at one point during that trip, he actually sat down with me and wanted to know why I was so angry at him, why I was so distant. He just wanted some information from me. And I basically looked at him and said, this is the memory that I have of you. The last time I saw you, you said you were going to come back and be my father. You said that, this was not going to be it for us. I saw you leave on that airplane for your last trip in the military. And then I didn't really hear from you or see you ever again. And he tried to explain, then, he tried to see me, he tried to call me, he tried to be involved. He would ask for my grades, or ask for my mother to have us draw a picture so he could put our artwork on his refrigerator. He did everything he could to be involved. And I was like, you're a liar. That's not true.
Yeah.
My mother would have me. No way.
Right. Sorry, Amanda, maybe do you want to come back maybe in 20 minutes? I don't want to hold you hostage sitting there, like maybe 20 minutes or so, and then that way you don't have to wait. And then, yeah.
No, that sounds good. I've got some magpies outside that are making an awful lot of noise as well. So
yeah, cool. We'll talk to you very soon. I just feel bad that you're just sitting there.
no,
yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay. So yeah, we'll see you back here in a bit. Thank you.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So even if your father came to you and talked to you, and he did, and obviously because it is a problem, right? As far as you're concerned, he has no credibility at all, because you have been brainwashed with all these stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is so critical for targeted parents to recognize, is that you cannot win this by using logic with your children.
No.
They cannot hear you, they cannot understand you. You don't have credibility with them because your credibility has been destroyed not by you but by the alienators. So the children now cannot, and the more you say, the worse it make you, because now it looks like you defending yourself and everything, right?
Right. And I would point out that and I don't want to downplay anybody's experience, especially a parent that's trying to reach out to their child or their children. I don't want to downplay anything. But I think it was a lot easier before today's technology to alienate parents, because I look back on my experience and I remember there was phone calls and there was emails, and that was it. There was no such thing as video chat. If you were lucky, there might be a desktop with a webcam in the house, but I mean, there was none of this online gaming where, if your child has a gaming account, you can maybe play games online together. None of the social media platforms where you might be able to reach your child on one of those. I mean, there are so many different outlets where you can try and track down your child or try and reach out to your child, which I hope parents that are looking to do that, I hope they're able to get through and just give some kind of contact. Something as simple as I love you, I miss you. It doesn't have to be a full-blown conversation, but just trying to initiate and keep some kind of regular contact. The child will be able to look back one day and be like, I see this. I see this trail. I have memories of this trail. Whereas back then, it's real easy to hide those emails and those phone calls.
Yeah, and throw away the gift and the presents.
Exactly. So I think I think there's a lot more options now, and it's a lot harder for the alienator to keep up with all the different options where the targeted parent might try to reach out. And I think that's a good thing, because, you know, I'm sure being an alienator is exhausting all on its own, but trying to track down all the different technological outlets, I hope they don't find them all. I hope they're not able to block them all.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And I think what Lulu just talked about is so important. Like that's a very good tips for parents. That's a good advice for parents. Definitely trying to figure out you have so many options out there to reach out. Hi, Derek. So nice to have you in the room. Derek's in the team, right? So anyway, for my case, my father, this is back then, but he created a website. He used a Google site, and he actually left for me after he passed, and I was able to get back those things, and have the evidence of what happened.
That's amazing. I mean, that is really incredible.
Seriously, that's is like everything. What he left for me was everything in my healing, and everything what I do now. Like the strength that gave me, that healing that gave me. So really, you have, like Lulu was saying, you have so many options today to leave your digital footprint, to reach out digitally, to have ways. But it's not about using logic to get to your children. It's not about punishment, because your children didn't do anything. They did what they knew as to be the right thing to do. They didn't know that they were doing a bad thing to you. That this is not their fault. So you can't use punishment to your children, and you can't use logic to convert your children. So those are really important to recognize. So okay. All right. So then, during that time you went and you saw him, and you're an adult at that point, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something so important too. Is a lot of parents like, oh, I'm waiting for my kid to turn 18. There's nothing magical about that number 18.
Yeah. There's not any magic button or magic age. Like I said, this continued on to me becoming a mother, and it affected my children. You know, he didn't get to meet his grandchildren until 2 years ago.
Right. So yeah. So don't just think that because your children are adult, and then why can't they understand it? It's because all the brainwashing, the campaign has been going on for so long. And if you have something that you see as truth, it's very difficult to break out of that. So okay, so now you kind of recognize that your mother, and by the way, somebody in the room said, oh, lucky that your mother is not narcissistic. I'm actually questioning that. I'm wondering if they are wrong about that. Sorry, what did you say?
I question that as well. I think if someone were to actually diagnose her, it would not be any surprise if she was a narcissist.
And I'm curious, what did other people outside, when they saw you and your mother when you were a child, what was their expression or impression of her? Did they think that she was an amazing mother?
So this is what irritates me about then and now. It is exactly the same. Oh, she's a single mom. She got out of a bad marriage. She's doing so great putting her life back together. You know, she's a single mom and she's a working mom at the same time. She is just so strong. And you know, we idolize mothers and alienating parents that are doing the same thing. But I say mothers mostly because that was my experience, and because that is what society sees as the norm, as, you know, the mother should get more time with the children, therefore she's the primary parent, therefore she has more power and ability, in my opinion, to use these tactics. So people saw her as a strong person, as a strong-willed, as a productive and a motivated, and just like all those positive words that you want to build your children up with. That's how they saw my mother. You know, they idolized her in ways that I did.
Right. So the alienator was abusive, but yet the rest of the world doesn't see it. They thought that she was an outstanding human being and parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that the question, again, it was, I mean, there's so many questions, and I apologize. I will try to scroll back up because I still have so much more into this story. We're not even near the end yet. Yeah. So yeah, that's the problem. So you know, they are so good at hiding. They have this facades. Um, so anyway, so you're now an adult, and your father talked to you, and you still didn't see it. You have your own children, you're engaged, married, etc., and you still did not see it. Logic still did not work on you,
Nope.
and you already had trouble with your relationship with your mother. So it's not like you are still like attached to your mother,
Right.
but yet you still not reconnect. So what does it take? Like how did it get to the point that you end up seeing your father?
You know, it really got to the point of me experiencing what I did with my first divorce and seeing how my mother was treating my ex-husband, or, you know, at the time ex-husband to be. I watched that. That was part of a huge wake-up call. And then the next real serious relationship that I got into, which was my remarriage, you know, he had a situation, a custody situation, or has a custody situation with his only biological child. And I watched my mother's reaction and her tactics become applied to his case as well. She actually got so involved with his case that she has actually shown up at hearings with the child's mother to testify against him. So that was another wake up call. And
Oh my
I
God.
think, yeah. So I think those two experiences, and then the troubled relationship that I had with my mother in general, all these questions of things that just didn't make sense. You know, there was not one defining moment. There were just all these different moments and all these different questions that I started asking, and things that just didn't add up anymore. And then there was I watched my mother's third divorce. You know, I watched that happen, and I watched how she treated him and my youngest brother, and I watched how she treated me during that divorce. I became ostracized during that divorce because you know, there was one day where I was having a conversation with my dad, and my younger brother from us, the three older set, the younger brother from that relationship, had thought he heard something, heard me say something. So he went and told my mother and was like, oh, you know, she's talking about this. So her and my grandmother came home that night and just started cussing at me and calling me names, and basically was like, I can't believe you picked his side. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not picking sides. I mean, we were talking about something that belongs to my fiance. Like, it was not what you thought we were talking about. So again, that was another moment that just kind of really made me question what the hell is going on. Yeah, I think during that time period, also somewhere in there between 24 and 26, my father had reached out to my business page as well and tried to get a hold of me. And I was not ready to talk to him at the time. So I think that's kind of where the evolution of the letter came in. Was I was trying to prepare myself for talking to him and just trying to, I know a lot of people, they're going to think, oh, well, you don't owe him an explanation. But at the same time, I was like trying to prepare myself to explain to him why I acted the way I did and why I'm so sorry, and the guilt that I have. And like, I was trying to prepare myself for that letter. And so that's really what led up to me reaching out and finally reciprocating some kind of contact. And from there, it was very little conversations here and there. I don't think I actually spoke to him on the phone. Oh, goodness. So there was very little contact between the two of us until I actually saw him in person 2 years ago. And when I saw him in person and came home back to Texas, I think it was about a month or two after that I was going to have a phone call with him. And I was so nervous. Like I was in a group chat with a bunch of friends of mine, other advocates who completely, they were parents. They're not alienated children, but that they completely understand what family courts can do to families. And I'm like, I have to stay on my phone. I have to stay texting you guys, or I'm going to put my phone down and I will ignore his phone call. Not because I don't want to talk to him, but I am so nervous. I'm so scared to have a conversation with him. Like, what are we going to talk about? And to this day, that's sort of the relationship that we still have.
How did that phone call go?
It went really well. I think it actually turned into like a 30-minute phone call. It was just basically like, how are you doing? How's your business doing? How are, grandkids doing? How are they doing in school? There were enough topics of conversation brought up to where it could actually be a conversation. Which still at the time was such a foreign concept to me to have a conversation with him. And like, I can feel myself getting jittery, like even now, just like thinking about having a conversation with him, because I'm just like I really want him in my life. I really want to have like this paternal bond with him, but I'm so hesitant because of my childhood, because of what I've been through. And I really just don't know where to go. Like, I don't know how to build that bond with him. So that's really where I'm at now as far as my relationship with my father. I'm trying to build that bond, but I'm lost.
And he didn't try to use that time to explain himself or justify things in that phone call.
Well, because we had seen each other in person and we'd had that really deep conversation of, is this real? There was a lot of talk about the past. So I'd gotten quite a few answers and clarification on things. I don't think, from what I can recall, I don't think he really ever talks about the past. I think he just like really talks about what's going on presently. Just wants to know if me and the girls are doing okay. If we ever need anything, that sort of stuff. If I want to talk about the past, he will talk about it with me, but I don't think he really ever brings it up or tries to. He doesn't really try to explain things unless I ask.
This is also another thing that is very important for parents to recognize, is that they keep looking at the reunification point as the destination. It's actually far, far from destination. Once you reconnect with your child, you have so much more work to go ahead to rebuild that relationship. It's not going to be easy, right? Because you've been through so much, and now you're both adults. You've been separated. You've been seeing different truth. To you, it was truth, even though it's false. So the rebuild is going to be challenging. And the problem is, if you hold, as parents, if you hold any resentment towards your child because of the child's behavior, then you're not helping with this healing and rebuild journey, because you can't hold resentment toward a child that did not know what they did. They did it because of the alienator's influence. So if you ever get to a point of reconnecting, you have to take that as a brand new, fresh start. You have to be willing to let go of the past and be the parent for that child, even though now that child might be an adult. So yeah, it's not going to be an easy journey. Don't look at that as a destination. Far from it. So now, and I'm curious. You mentioned about you went to see his ex-wife, the wife after your mother. Was that before you wrote the letter, or is that after?
That was before. She had gotten to a point in the conversation with me where she was like, I really appreciate you reconnecting with me and saying all these kind things to me, and even apologizing for things that you really don't need to be apologizing for. But I really encourage you to reach out to him and have these conversations with him. So she was also a push in that direction for me to reach out to him.
So that's nice that he get a little bit of support from here and there. And actually, it's very nice that you actively looking for, and that's actually true, because that's the same with me. Is the moment somebody alerted me that I was an alienated child. I mean, I didn't know that term at the time, but anyway, I was alerted that something was not right about that. I went looking, And that's how I found my father's website. I never just kind of take whatever people said. I actually try to dig in, and that's what you did too. So yeah, really, you can't stop living. For targeted parents, it may be traumatic what you're going through. Um, if you wanted to have a chance to reconnect with your children, you have to live your life. You have to be the best you can, because when your children are ready to come back to you, or when your children start to look out for you, you want them to have something to find you with, and
Yeah.
even if it happened that you pass, like my case, my father passed, I have so much to have respect and admiration and love for him because of that. So it's important that you live your full life, and I know it's not easy. The journey is really painful, and you're dealing with false allegation and attack and losing your children and all that. So I get that. So I've also noticed that you said that you were in a group. So you was not only looking for answer, you also proactively looking for solution. So is that how you got involved with those groups, even though you were the parent?
Well, with the first group that I ever got involved in, it was the Texas Fathers' Rights. And I found them when I was going through my divorce with my ex-husband, because I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything the right way. Obviously, I was not going to get my mother's support. So I started looking for pages and resources that were support for fathers. Because I was not raised in an environment that supported fathers. I was not raised in an environment that encouraged the relationship between a father and their child or their children. So I didn't know what that looked like. And legally in a divorce, I didn't know what that looked like either. So I got involved because of my first marriage. I wanted to make sure that I did the right thing. And then the next really large group that I got involved in was Texas 2503. And I got involved with them because of my experience. I believe I was already reunified with my father by the time I got involved with that group. So I was already establishing the healing process that I'm needing, that I do need to go through, that I am going through. So two very different reasons as to why I got involved, and two different types of advocacy, same platform being family court, but two separate issues.
Thank you. And so, by the way, so I'm so grateful for that group, Texas 2503. You guys are amazing. I love your work. I'm so excited. I'm going to be hanging out with these guys in person very soon. I feel love, and I feel a part of that group. Thank you, you guys. And I've seen you guys on the ground working. So let's talk about your advocacy work now. Like, what are you fighting for, and what are you doing?
So currently what the Texas 2503 group is doing, there are two bills that are in the Texas legislature right now that are being pushed to become a law. One, both of them have to do with interference with child custody, which is an obvious factor in parental alienation, especially when it comes to withholding the child from possession and access to one of their parents. So currently the law is a state jail felony, but it's not being enforced. A lot of parents are familiar with this scenario, and it's seen as normal in our society, which absolutely just burns me to the core. Parent goes to pick up child pursuant to their court order. They have the order that says that, they have possession and access of the child during this time. And the other parent is like, nope, not going to hand the child over, or I'm just going to flat out ignore your attempts to contact me to pick up the child, and we're just going to totally disappear. You don't need to know where the child is, or what they're up to, or even if they're still alive. You just go on with your life. So the parent that's being targeted, they're trying to call the cops and be like, hey, I need someone to give me a report for what's going on here. I'm trying to pick up my child. I'm not being permitted to do so. This is a state jail felony. There is a crime that is being committed here. Officers are coming onto the scene. If they do come onto the scene, or if it's just over the phone, they're basically having to state, this is a civil matter, take it back to court. Well, I mean, sorry, but if it were any other crime committed against a child, are the officers going to tell that parent, nah, take the parent to civil court? This is not our ball game. No, that's not what they would tell parents. That's not what they would tell anybody that's reporting a crime against a child. Unfortunately, that is the scenario that's going on. So the two bills that are in play right now, one of them helps.
Sorry, hold on for 1 second. I want to just kind of clarify a little bit before we go into the bills. And by the way, everyone, Derek is into the chat room. He's one of the guy in the team. Yeah, love you guys, Derek. Yeah, so yeah, everyone, you can see Derek's in the room, and he posts about Texas 2503. So what's something Lulu just said is so important, and a lot of parents face with this and they don't realize. So they like Lulu just explained, and it's not just in Texas, it's almost every state. Custody interference is a felony, but when the parents turn up and try to pick up the child and being rejected, and they try to call the police will say, we're not going to get involved with the civil matter, just like she said. So this is something that not just in Texas, it happened everywhere. And it has a lot to do with lack of awareness, lack of understanding. So the police will look at the custody order. The custody is a family court matter. So they will say, well, this is a civil matter, because they themselves don't understand that there's a criminal code. So on our website, we have a post where we list all the criminal codes for multiple states. So, if you don't know your state, let us know and we'll look it up for you. Or you can look it up yourself, but almost every state has a criminal code for custody interference. And to recognize that is not just a civil matter. If you turn up and you are not informed, it's very hard for you to push the police to take action. But if you are informed, then you have a much better leg on this. So one of the big things that the Team 2503, even before these bills were in place, is that you guys did a lot of education for parents and provide support for them, right? You guys turning up and become the witness and educate the officers, and you go to meeting with the officer and you go to the DA office. You guys do a lot of these, right? And that's amazing. And actually, I learned a lot from this team because of what you guys are doing. And that's what I mean. This team is so proactive, you guys. They are out there, and we need a team like this for every state. We need a team like this everywhere, because really parents need support, and you shouldn't have to handle this alone. I think another thing that you guys also do a bit is being a court watcher, because you want to make sure that if you go to court, sometime you might end up with a judge that may be unfair. And if you have witnesses in the courtroom, it kind of forces the judge to be a little bit more alert and sort of less likely to be biased. And so all of these activities, like, I think parents need that kind of support everywhere. And I wanted to point out that this team, they're not getting paid to do this. They are just parents like you guys. So really, it's up to all of us to get together and go, hey, let's go and help each other here. Let's help each other out. Let's become more informed. Let's educate the officers. Let's educate everybody involved. And I think this is a big part of it, because you guys are making a huge difference. You guys talk to the legislators, and you guys are pushing all of this. And that is so important. So before we go into those two bills, there were actually 4 bills that we were pushing, right? There's even 2153, I'm sorry, HB 2150, and also, and then, okay, so go ahead. Now let's talk about the bills. Yeah.
Okay, so the 2 bills that I want to talk about first are bills that our group actually drafted, and we submitted them to the legislators that decided to introduce them. So the first one that I want to talk about, it basically gives the county or the municipality the ability to create a fine up to a certain amount for each infraction. So what this basically looks like, depending on how the county or the municipality wants to adopt it, they can adopt it as a citation, and the offender can go to the county or municipal court and say, they can plead some kind of way. And the judge there will handle it. The best way I could compare it would be like a speeding ticket. You can go to court and contest your speeding ticket if you really wanted to. But also, this is something that could be applied, I believe, in an enforcement case or anytime that it's brought up to, a court, any civil or any municipal court, for whatever reason that you're there, it can be brought up, and the offender can be fined for each individual offense that they are doing. So that is a really, really important thing. And the reason it's so important is because currently the only person that really is getting informed would be, if anybody gets an offense report currently, only the DA's office is being informed about it. And the DA's office is having a hard time prosecuting these cases because either it's not a strong enough case for them to prosecute, or they're saying that all these loopholes, or there's always some kind of reason as to why the district attorney's office is not interested in these cases. For whatever reason that may be, we're hoping that this specific bill is going to strengthen each individual area so that we can cut down on this in a more local sense. So that's the first bill, and I want to say that is House Bill 4220.
4240. Yeah, HB 4240 with House Rep Richard Raymond.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
okay, and I just want to add something. Marlene in the chat room said that fines don't work when they have money. I want to clarify a few things. One is that it does work for those that can't afford it, so that kind of matter in a little bit. And then for those that don't care about money, it still matters a lot because you wanted to build your case, and every of these citation become a part of your case, and then you can subpoena the officer to come and testify, and etc., etc. So then your case is less about he said, she said, and hearsays. You now have proper records, so when you have to go and fight it, you finally have something, and that's very important part of this too. It's not just about that $500 fine that they are getting. Yeah, go ahead.
So, and I do want to point out that as a group, as a whole, we have worked on these bills very diligently. We've done a lot of research, and we've had a lot of involvement with parents and using their experiences to help us draft what we thought was the needs for Texas. So if y'all are seeing Derek in the chat room there, go spam him with a bunch of thumbs up, because he had a lot of work into drafting this first bill. They used a lot from a lot of his ideals from his draft for that first bill that Richard Raymond ended up introducing. And that bill is halfway through the legislature. So, any of these bills that we talk about, just please call your representatives and your senators and ask them to favor these bills and to pass them, vote yes and pass them through the next stages.
Yeah, so HB 4240 went to the Senate, and then it was introduced on the Senate side by Senator Zaffarini. And I think it's with the State Affairs, I believe, right now, the committee. So that's that bill. Yeah, go ahead.
So the second bill that I want to bring up is SB 2011. And this is the bill that I helped draft quite a bit. And it was introduced by Senator Jose Menendez, who this senator has had a years long relationship with this group. They already had a relationship with him by the time I came on board. And I actually had a discussion with Senator Menendez that was very heartfelt, kind of explained to him why this was so important to me and why I really wanted him to champion this bill. So this is a much larger bill. What it does is it basically enhances and strengthens the law as it is. It gives law enforcement, those that are first on the scene, these men and women, they need more support. They need, what we've basically done with this bill is we've said, try to make contact with the alleged offender, try to locate the child. It's steps that can be taken. It's like a checklist that need to be taken to try and intervene for the sake of the child or the children's well-being. And there's nothing about this bill that says police have to take the child from one parent and hand them over to the other child. The bill does not do that in any sense of the word. All it does is it asks, or it doesn't ask, it's using the word shall. So this is not a use your discretion. It's if there's an offense being committed here, there's going to be an offense report written up. You know, there's going to be proper documentation. Since there's not proper documentation now, we're strengthening the law so that that documentation is done rightfully. And from there, it just gives more steps and more of a backbone to the bill to make sure that you know, the district attorney, I'm trying to think of the term that's put basically it gives information to the district attorney that says, oh, well, what if this parent was running late? Well, no, we've covered all of those scenarios. So if it's out of the parent's control as to why they were late or didn't show up with the child to do the exchange, you know, as long as they communicate, as long as they inform the other parent and they're like, hey, sorry, we're running late, or, you know, something completely out of their control, and it's not on a regular basis, you know, then this is not something that they can be prosecuted for. You can't be prosecuted because you got a flat tire, and you can't be prosecuted because the child's, you know, daycare activity was late.
We know that the DA office doesn't just pick up the case with the first citation. They
exactly.
Right. They need to look at this, like multiple of these offense reports. And by the way, parents, when you go and ask, you want to ask for an offense report. It's not an incident report. It's different. And with the offense report, now it's the criminal matters, and the DA, the district attorney office, they are looking at those. The incident report is just a civil matter, so you really need to push on the district attorney side. And so yeah, anyway, and Derek posted in the chat room there's a list of the bills. So yeah, anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Anyways, so not only does it give a checklist to law enforcement, but it also gives a little more clarification to the district attorney's office as far as prosecution goes. So parents that do need to be held accountable for their actions, they can actually be held accountable, and not just some isolated mishap like, you know, the flat tire situation. At one point, it was worded with an enhancement that on your third offense, it becomes a third-degree felony, but they did amend that part of the bill, and they've done away with it just to keep it a state jail felony. So that's the SB 2011 that Senator Jose Menendez is pushing through, and that is also halfway through. It's been voted through the Senate floor, and now it's going to the House side on the Justice, Juvenile, and Family Issues Committee. Right.
Now it's going to that committee that is led by the chair, Victoria Neve, House Rep Victoria Neve. Okay, so all right, so there's those, and then we have HB 803. Do you want to talk about that one? Yeah.
Well, HB 803, this one is really important. This is the second Texas session that I've been involved with an equal parenting bill. And what this does is there's a portion in the Texas Family Code where it basically says that it tells a judge, we encourage you to order the standard possession order, but if you have to modify away from that, whatever modification you make it as close to the standard possession order as you possibly can. And I will get that Texas Family Code for y'all so that you can you have it for information wise. So that's the biggest problem that we have in Texas right now is a lot of parents, they're granted a standard possession order, and even if they ask for an expanded possession order, very often they are denied that request. And so what the equal parenting bill does is it really does encourage a relationship with both parents. It really does equalize the time between both parents and gives the child or the children the stability of the bond with both parents, the involvement of being there and present for extracurricular activities, helping with homework, gives parents the chance to not miss out on milestones, the child learning how to ride a bike or losing teeth, whatever is occurring in that child's life, both parents have next to equal opportunity to be involved as much as possible.
Right. That's the thing, is separation or divorce doesn't have to be traumatizing for the children. It's all the stuff that when you put the child in the middle of that conflict, that's when it starts to become traumatizing. But you can have an amicable divorce, and it doesn't have to be, horrific experience for the children. But anyway, so for example, Destiny said alienators will do everything opposite and are spiteful. And yeah, that's true. And that's the question that I always have, is how much of this is motive and how much of it is ignorant. And I really strongly believe that it has a lot to do with the intent, the motive, than the ignorant. And then with the society and the law not supporting the alienated parents, that it sort of empowers the alienated to justify what they do even more. Yeah, so the fourth bill is HB 2153.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is the one where it's basically asking the legislator to, or Texas legislation to make alienation, to make it a crime.
Yeah, a child abuse, to get it recognized as child abuse. So, I'm sorry. Let's go back to HB 803, which is a presumption of equal shared parenting. So what happened to that? We had a great turnout at the hearing. A lot of parents turn up and testify. And then what happened?
Turned up to testify, and it was a wonderful turnout. The hearing was held in the Justice, Juvenile, and Family Issues Committee, and that's where SB 2011 is sitting right now. And this is a really important factor to consider, where these bills are sitting right now, because bringing up HB 803 again, what happened to it? Where's it going?
It's dead, because the deadline is over. Because I think we're near very close to the end of the legislative session. I think it's going to end June 1st. So we have it's being held hostage. I think it's dead.
It hasn't moved, I think, in over a month. That I believe, I don't recall, and I might have to be corrected on this, but I believe the committee did not vote on it. So it's just kind of sitting there. So it doesn't have any votes to leave the committee, to get sent to calendars, to get sent to the House floor. It's just kind of sitting there. And, there's no way we've been able to get it to move. And the reason that this bill is so important is kind of like what I pointed out earlier. Parents or children that are subjected to a standard possession order, there's one parent that has excessively more time with the child, and therefore they have prime opportunity to apply those alienation tactics. And I believe that there would be less child abuse, less alienation, and less psychological abuse if we were able to even out the possession and access between parents. I think this bill is very, very important to move along and get it out of committee, because it plays a very vital role in protecting children that are still going through this and will continue to go through this. Another important factor to bring up is a lot of people that speak out opposed to equal parenting bills are domestic violence advocates. And I'm sorry, but that really offends me. I'm a victim. I am a victim of psychological abuse. And the fact that domestic violence advocates want to speak out and say that equal shared parenting is going to give an abuser access to their victims, I'm sorry, but that's already happening. The standard possession order is what's giving abusers access to their victims. And I need those advocates to be more educated. I need those advocates to have a conversation with me, because I need your support. And children like me, like where I was in my childhood, they need your support. So
yeah, and that's a very big problem. Is that domestic violence activists do not recognize that parental alienation is real, that it is a form of child abuse, that it is a form of domestic violence. Like, we are really fit right into it, but somehow they decided to make us the I don't know, the scapegoat.
yeah, it's called pseudoscience. Nobody wants to validate what we've actually been through.
Right. And that's crazy to me, because you're not fighting custody, you're not trying to reduce child support, you're not trying to get even with your ex, none of those things. You're the child, you experience it, and they try to make it a father rights versus the feminist group issues. Like she said, he said, this is a fight between parents. You completely miss the point. This is about the children, and we are the children. We are speaking up, and they're not listening.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem with 803 is, you know, people that are opposed to it, they're opposed to it for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And we're not advocating for an abusive parent. It's
Absolutely
the point
not.
of it, right? The point of it is to have a starting point, the presumption of equal, until you establish something.
Right. And the most important point about this bill is, if you are able to get a standard possession order, that means that you're a joint managing conservator. So equal shared parenting is also for joint managing conservators. So if you're good enough for a standard possession order, you're good enough for an equal parenting possession order. So people that are educating themselves on this bill, they need to keep that in mind. That sole conservatorship applies when family violence has been proven or has been a factor. So joint managing conservatorship is when both parents have been proven to be fit parents. So this bill does not give abusers access to their victims. Absolutely not.
Right. So Bernard was asking about the term that you just mentioned. So what this activist group is trying to say is that parental alienation is not real, and they said that parental alienation is pseudoscience. They're trying to say that it's not scientific. And it's what Lulu was just talking about right now is not just what's happening in the House floor in Texas. This is what we are dealing with worldwide. These activist group are taking these their stand to bring in bills to destroy and silence the victim of parental alienation around the country and around the world. And they bring in these bills that are like so dangerous, and then they fight the bills that are important to these victims. And really, the psychological abuse is just as serious as sexual abuse or physical abuse, and the long-term ramifications of it is just very, very serious. And it's really unfortunate that we up against this. So yeah, the next bill is HB 2153. Now, remember, we just talked about how 803, the last bill, the HB 803, not H, SB 803. I'm sorry, it's the Senate bill that went to the House. It ended up in the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee, and then now it's being killed. It's dead. It's sitting there. It's not getting anything. Okay, so remember that committee. The next bill that we're going to talk about right now is HB 2153. This is a House bill that's trying to put parental alienation to be recognized as child abuse. Guess where it went to? Where did this bill go?
It also went to Justice, Juvenile, and Family Issues.
Yeah, and then what happened to that bill?
It hasn't moved.
We never even got a hearing, right? We got over 600 parents and adult children. We listed the name of everybody. We had 52 organization advocacy group behind supporting this bill. And we talked to everybody in the House, in the committee. We contacted everyone, and they will not even give this bill a hearing date. So I'm really curious why the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues, which is the committee that's set out to take care of families and children, the legislation to do with this, and yet these critical bills, and I mean, like the same what you said, HB 803, there's hundreds of parents turning up to testify, and yet nothing. We never get to have that bill move. It's going to die. HB 2153 is already dead because it's got a certain deadline that it has to be, come out. It never came out, so it's dead. It's so interesting. And then SB 2011 went, now it's going to the same committee. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen to that bill, whether it's ever going to get a hearing. Like, what's going on? Is that a black box?
That's a really interesting question, especially because the committee members, most of them are different people this session. Even the chairperson is different. So what is going on? What is it that we need to do to, whose experience, whose story, whose expertise do we need to paint the picture that Texas children are suffering, and these legislators, they're the ones that can make the changes. They're the ones that can be the heroes to these victims. It's starting with them, because the law can't be enforced. There can't be any intervention until these legislators decide to vote yes. So what is going on?
Right. Yeah, it's actually very frustrating because we have so many parents behind this, so many children behind this, professionals behind this. We even submit, scientific research and data and information to all these legislators. We send in the package of lists of all these parents, name by name. We even list the professional that was backing this up. We even list all the organization that are backing up to this bill, and we could not even get anything. And then, like you said, 803 got over 100 parents turning up, and it's also did not get to see the light of the day. And then now we have SB 2011. It's going to be interesting to see. We're running out of time because the session is going to be over very soon. So we only have HB 4240 that is going into the Senate, and it's going to be, let's see if we have any hope there. That would be, yeah. So,
and I do want to point out, just because these other two bills haven't moved, for whatever reason, for whatever Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee, I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to say that they're not doing their job, because there must be something going on. Maybe I don't know. I continue to have hope for the bills that are going to continue to go through them. I continue to hope that the legislators are going to give a hearing to the bills that need it and give the votes that are needed. So my best advice at this point is for parents and advocates to continue to reach out to the committee, and continue to reach out to their senators and their state representatives to ask them to favor these bills. Because we do not have the answers. That is my biggest point. We do not have the answers. We don't know what's going on. But just continue to contact folks in the Texas legislature, be professional, be polite, and just tell them why it's important to you. Tell them, you don't need to tell them your whole story, but just tell them that they're important and why.
Yeah, I think that's so important, is to be polite, be patient, and yeah, you can tell a brief summary of what you're going through, but yeah, showing your support for that, I think, is important. And I think that's a very good point, like you said. So for parents that haven't seen it, I actually interview Senator Jose Menendez, as well as the House Rep Richard Raymond, about those two of those bills that we talk about. And I also actually asked Rep Raymond later on about what he thought about what's going on, and he also emphasized that we need to have faith that everyone have good intention, that let's not question people's motive, because there's a lot going on, but we do want to know, we do want to have information, like, is there something there that we are missing, so that hopefully in the future we can create a bill that is truly in line with everyone involved. Because the point of this is to make sure that it addresses the needs for all the constituents in Texas.
Right.
Yeah. So you guys see, it's so amazing that Lulu was the child victim, and she suffers so much because of this abuse that she didn't even see it until much later in her life and finally recognized it. And now she's an advocate for this. She's so proactive. She's out there. And yeah, so much going on. I'm so proud of what you do. And I really, like I said, I said to the same with Derek, George, Claudia, Kimmy, all these people in 2503, you guys are incredible. Paul, like all these different people out in Texas, you guys have an amazing team. I'm so looking forward to see you guys. We are still working even after this session over. This is not a short-term thing. It's going to be a long-term thing that we're building. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we go?
I do have a lot of people that reach out to me, and they ask me, what can they be doing for their kids? A lot of alienated parents. And I just really want to reiterate, if there is some kind of trail that you can leave, whether it's little messages here and there, I missed you, I love you. If you want to put together a photo book for them, or, just put something together for them, because when they wake up, it's going to be like coming out of a fog, and they're going to be traumatized. It doesn't matter what age, they're going to be traumatized. There's going to be a lot of open sores, a lot of hesitation, a lot of grief, a lot of walls to bring down. They're going to need something from you. And I know a lot of parents are going to be real eager to push, real eager to just like get as much communication, as many hugs, as many visits in as they possibly can, as when their kids start coming out of the fog. But I mean, my personal experience, take it at the pace that the child, or when they're an adult, I keep saying child, but I wasn't a child when I came out of the fog. So
yeah, the adult child victim.
Yeah. And that's truly what you have to see them as. Maybe not so much as a victim at that point, but at that point, they're a survivor. That's how I am able to relate to my situation, or relay my situation, is I am a survivor of parental alienation. And there are kids, and we know for a fact there are parents that take their lives over these situations. So don't give up.
Oh my God. Actually, so you mentioned about, parents and kids that takes their life because of this. On top of that, there's homicides due to parental alienation, homicide of children and homicide of the parents. It's crazy. There's a question earlier on. It was very good, and I meant to make sure I don't forget, so I remember it now. Okay, so the question was, I think it's from Tyler, was that if you were a child, now that you're looking back, if you were a child at that point, do you think it would have been helpful for other adult alienated children, survivor, to come and share their story? Would it help you recognize, let's say at school, right? If there's an event where 3 or 4 of us turn up and talk about our experience, do you think if you were watching it as a child, would that have helped you?
I think if it had happened early on, maybe around somewhere between the age of 6 and 10, I think if someone had reached out to me then, and I had seen or heard some type of alienated child story, I think that would have helped. But after around the time that I was 10 or 11, I was so brainwashed that it probably wouldn't have even fazed me, to be honest.
So early intervention is very important.
Very important.
So I think that's what we're going to do. You and me and all of us are going to travel around and give talk to these schools. No, I'm serious. I'm not joking. Yeah, we're going to be, I'm so looking forward to see you. Please do come. I'm going to get to see Lulu and Derek and George and all that in person very soon. But it feels like I've already known all of you guys in person. It's weird, this internet thing. Yeah. But thank you so much. Really amazing story, amazing transformation from where you came from and who you are today, and how much you are giving and advocating for other people out there. That's incredible. And by the way, she's not getting paid. I'm not getting paid. None of us are getting paid. We are still have to take care of our bills and doing our normal lives.
Yeah.
But
This is just whatever free time we have, we put in all the effort that we can.
right, yeah. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see you soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you take care. Okay,
You
bye.
too.
Have a good day. All right.
You too.
Okay. Okay, let me see if I can go and I wonder if Amanda can come back. If Amanda can't come back right now, I think we can just figure out a different day to bring Amanda back. She's in Australia, and I think there was a mix-up with the time schedule and things. So I think I must have sent a wrong time or something. So that's why she was not able to join when we started. But don't worry, we'll make sure that we get her back when the time another time, because we're still going to be here. So thank you. I wanted to add another thing though. Talking about what you should do as target parents, the other thing that is also very important is to create videos and letters that is just in case videos or letters. So think about that. Create a video that you can tell your children how much you love them, and think about think about a video that you want your children to play if you are no longer around, but it's on their wedding, on their graduation. Like, think of these occasion, Christmas. So you wanted to create a few of those. Try to think of that, and then write letters too. So both video form and letters. There's many things that you can do actually. So I think Amanda is not coming back right now, but we'll figure out a different time. And thank you so much, you guys. Please like, please share, and feel free to leave more comments. We're always gonna try to look more for things